what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Chaplain Major General Thomas L. Soljum, 25th Chief of Chaplains of the United States Army, will lead us in the invocation.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me as we mark this very special occasion in a word of prayer. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Merciful, holy, loving, and omnipresent God, who comforts us in time of need, we gather today in your presence to remember, to never forget, the unimaginable calamity visited upon this nation on September 11th, 2001. On that day, our nation was shocked. 2,996 Americans perished. 184 of those died here in the Pentagon. Mothers, fathers, husbands, wives, grandparents, children, and siblings, leaving a void in the lives of thousands more. Today we remember and we perpetually stand with those who have felt the sting of this tragedy. Many have lost colleagues and friends. May God comfort you. We are grateful to our fellow Americans, our colleagues, first responders, service members, and civilian servants who rushed into action, displaying the strength of character and commitment to our nation and people. That historic moment ignited the will of our people and the might of our armed forces who responded to the grave threat that faced our nation. The past 2 decades revealed the valor, heroism, and commitment of our service members, their families, our civilians who stand alongside each and every day. We thank you for the men and women who stepped into action in New York City on United Flight 93 and here on this ground. We are mindful of those who paid the ultimate sacrifice, who suffered visible wounds to the body and invisible wounds to the soul and spirit of those who stood in the gap. We who are gathered here today are forever grateful to the selfless responses of the men and women to preserve our nation's securities and freedoms. May we be a light upon a hill for peace around the world. May this ceremony honor our sacred commitments to you and dignify all the lives of those who raised their hand in our nation's time of need, saying, "Here I am, send me." I pray these things in your most gracious and holy name. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. The Honorable Michael B. Donnelly, Director of Administration and Management.
Good morning, everyone. Deputy Secretary Hicks, General Hyten, it's an honor to be here with you on this solemn day. It's also our honor to welcome Governor and Mrs. Northam, Senator Kaine, House Majority Leader Hoyer, senior officials from the Office of the Secretary of Defense, and military and civilian leadership from across the services here as well. And in particular, I want to welcome and recognize all those members of our Pentagon family who served here on 9/11. We are so grateful that you all could join us today. Tomorrow, we will commemorate 20 years since the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001. 20 years since the loss of nearly 3,000 lives, including 125 of our teammates here at the Pentagon and 59 innocent passengers and crew aboard American Airlines Flight 77. They were mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, siblings, our friends, our colleagues. 20 years on, we still mourn the lives and futures that were taken from us. And today we reflect on their loss and renew the ties that bind us together as one Pentagon family. I am still inspired by the extraordinary examples set by the men and women of this community on 9/11 and the days that followed. Here, the Pentagon family met perhaps its darkest hours with its finest moments. I think of the leaders with whom I have worked who played such pivotal roles. One of my predecessors, Doc Cook, and John Jester, who led what is now the Pentagon Force Protection Agency, and Arlington County Fire Chief Jim Swartz, who was the incident commander. In the midst of tragedy, there was competence, teamwork, purpose, and resolve. When asked whether damage to the building would require the entire Pentagon to be temporarily evacuated or shut down, the assistant building manager, Steve Carter, replied firmly, "Not on our watch." I'm also thinking of the heroism of then Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Haroro, an Army nurse. Armed with nothing more than a first aid kit, she set up a triage area outside the Pentagon to care for dozens of her injured coworkers. And Army Lieutenant General John Van Alstyne, who set up a family assistance center at the Sheraton Hotel. In the midst of death and injury, there was duty and compassion. And I'm thinking of those among us today. You here, dedicated public servants like Bob Candido, the building manager today, Sajil Ahmed, who's worked IT issues here for so many years, and Dr. Kath Hicks, and so many thousands who were at the Pentagon on 9/11 and remained hard at work in the days after, providing for continuity in building operations, helping organize DoD's response to prevent more attacks. 20 years later, you have taken your place as this generation's leaders. And I'm also thinking of the Bourne sisters. Hannah Bourne was 3 years old, and her sister Heather was just an infant when they were rescued from the Pentagon Daycare Center on 9/11. Today, Second Lieutenant Hannah Bourne hopes to fly search and rescue missions for the Air Force, and Heather Bourne is a midshipman at the Naval Academy. 20 years later, the next generation of DoD and Pentagon leaders is rising to take our place. Following this terrible tragedy, we joined with Jim Lachek and the Pentagon 9/11 families to build a memorial, setting aside on this busy reservation a quiet and sacred space so that we will never forget. I also believe we have another 9/11 memorial, and that is you, a DoD community a Pentagon family, military, civilian, first responders from different components with different jobs across jurisdictions, but firmly united across generations by a deeply personal dedication to our nation's defense, and with the resilience to rise up and to rebuild, to return and to move forward. You are the living 9/11 memorial, and your continued dedication and service sends a message to our nation and to the world. Here at the Pentagon, at DoD's headquarters, our mission continues, and we will never forget. And now it is my distinct honor and privilege to introduce the Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General John Hyten.
So thank you, Mayor Donnelly, Madam Secretary, Governor, Leader Hoyer, Senator, distinguished guests. Most importantly, the survivors and family and friends of the fallen who suffered such a grievous loss 20 years ago. Thank you for being here this morning. This morning we come together as a Pentagon community, mindful that 9/11 has a special meaning to all who work in this building. We are mindful that we stand on sacred ground where 184 men and women, young and old, were taken from us when American Airlines Flight 77 struck the Pentagon at 9:37 in the morning. They were taken in a moment, taken with almost 3,000 more in New York City and Shanksville, Pennsylvania, in an unprovoked attack directed not just against the American people, but against our nation's guiding ideals of freedom, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so we gather today and every September 11th to honor those we lost and to reinvigorate the strength of the United States as we continue to grieve and heal together. I was assigned to the Pentagon that day, but I was not in the building at the time of the attack. I was in the meeting down the road, but I still remember the shock and the anger that I felt that day, but I also remember the feeling I had on the morning of September the 12th, when coming off a bus with nobody else but soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, dropping me off in the middle of the 395, walking down the hill, walking across the fire hoses, through the triage center into a burning building to go to work, to start to figure out what we're going to do next, what we're going to do about what had just happened. I also think about what life was like on September the 10th, that beautiful day, that calm day, when the nation was at peace. And no one anticipated the attack that was about to come. But as we gather here 20 years later, we know that September 11th is different. It stands apart from other days. It is a day that our nation and our families, our friends, our country will never forget. But instead, it united our nation with a powerful resolve to rebuild and to combat those who threatened our values and way of life. Many who died that day imparted a legacy of selfless service, courage, patriotism, and belief in high ideals. They also left behind spouses and children, family, all whom then became inspired to serve future generations and answer the call. May you also remember the lives of the 8 innocent children who died that day, whose bright futures were stolen from them. All these people inspired a generation who responded to the call of our nation as one, to fight and defend our way of life. A generation that has fought tirelessly to defeat terrorists and terrorism in Afghanistan and around the world, and for more than 20 years, we successfully prevented another major attack on our homeland. Never before in our history has America asked so much over such a long, sustained period of time of an all-volunteer force. we kept our nation safe. So now we reaffirm our commitment to those who were lost that day and those who we've lost since, that we will remember and we will always fight if necessary to ensure future generations of Americans can enjoy the same freedoms and liberties that we've inherited. And now, our 20-year experience in Afghanistan has come to an end. And all who served, along with our family and friends, feel many emotions this day. We feel every emotion that you can imagine: anger, frustration, confusion, but we also feel pride. Pride for doing the job our nation called us to do. Pride in doing it right and doing it well. Pride in doing it as one nation. Pride in evacuating 124,000 people in less than 2 weeks. People who now have an opportunity to live free. But our task is never done. We must continue our hard work to protect the lives of all Americans, our country, the values we cherish. We must stay ready and resilient. So I thank you for your commitment to our country. I thank you to everyone who serves, and I'm proud of everything that you do to defend this nation, our citizens, and our way of life. I'm honored to serve in each and every one of you. So thanks to you, thanks to your families, thanks for your sacrifice, and God bless each of you. It is now my privilege to introduce the Deputy Secretary of Defense, Kathleen Hicks. Thank you very much.
First, let me say thank you to Director Donnelly and Vice Chairman Heighton for just incredibly moving remarks. And thank all of you who are taking time out of your workday to join us here in this commemoration. We're honored to have Governor Northam and First Lady Northam, Senator Kaine, Leader Hoyer. Thank you all for coming here to join us alongside the other distinguished guests we have. And as the speakers before me, let me take a special moment to really thank those 9/11 survivors who are with us this morning, the families, the friends, the coworkers who lost those they love. 20 years after September 11, 2001, and here we are gathered to remember the innocent people who lost their lives during those horrific attacks. That includes the 59 passengers and crew aboard Flight 77, as well as the 125 of our colleagues, friends, and loved ones here at the Pentagon. We also honor those wounded, as Secretary Donnelly also mentioned, those who still bear invisible wounds, as the chaplain said, and we comfort their friends, family, and loved ones. And even as we're here collectively thinking about and remembering, acknowledging 9/11, there's something very personal, as you can hear in the stories already, about 9/11. Almost everyone of a certain age remembers where they were that Tuesday morning, a beautiful morning here at the Pentagon, much like this one. We each have our own 9/11 story, and for me, like those before me, I was right here at the Pentagon. I was working as the Deputy Director for Resources in the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, and the day began like pretty much any other work day. I took the bus into work with my son. I dropped him at the Pentagon's Child Care Center in North Parking, for those who don't know where it was. And I then headed into the B ring, somewhere between the 8th and 9th quarters. I sat down at my desk, and I remember firing up my computers, unlocking the safe, beginning to check email. One of my office mates had her radio on, as an Air Force colonel. And after Flight 11 crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center at 8:46 a.m., she plugged in the TV that we had on a mobile cart in our suite, and we all gathered around it to watch in horror. Approximately 17 minutes later, we saw Flight 175 hit the South Tower. And as we huddled around that television, we were incredibly upset and very confused. Why? Why would anybody do such a thing? I remember that same office mate who had had the radio on commented how surprised she was to see such an event happening in New York and not in Washington. It seems such an innocent thing for a coworker to say. So we were somehow still shocked when at 9:37 a.m., Flight 77 slammed into this building, striking between quarters 4 and 5, virtually destroying the C, D, and E rings. From where I was, essentially on the other side of the building, the impact of that crash felt like a heavy object falling in the hallway, a series of loud noises, the ground shaking. We opened our suite door to try to understand what was happening, but as anyone who was there that day will remember, our public address system did not work well. So we didn't know, and we waited, wondered. It didn't take long before, as we opened that suite door, we saw people in the hallways, and we decided the time was right to secure our computers, secure the office, and evacuate the building. Orderly, military precision, secure. I went immediately to the Pentagon Child Care Center, which of course was the North Star for what I knew I had to do that day. I picked up my son, and then I walked toward the Potomac River, which was the furthest point from the building. Looking back over the building, I saw helicopters overhead, smoke filling the sky, and all of that on the far side of the building, still not being quite sure what to do next or what exactly had happened. I was pretty sure public transportation wasn't operating, and I was standing in heels holding a child in my arms. And eventually I saw a colleague of mine from policy pull out of his parking spot in North Parking. So I flagged him down and I begged a ride away from the scene. And there began a many hours long effort to actually reach my home. My son and I were so lucky that day. This country had been attacked on a horrific scale across multiple locations, and it was done in a cowardly, horrific way. On 9/11, the next day, and in the months and years that followed, though, we saw this Pentagon community respond to that attack with incredible resiliency. We saw resiliency through acts of selflessness. Pentagon employees and first responders on that day who worked to rescue survivors and fight through an inferno. Incredibly, they rushed into danger, just as they did in New York, into the suffocating black smoke and unbearable intense heat. Uniformed, civilian, side by side, into a building that was destroyed to save other people. All the while, they had no idea if that building might collapse further or if another attack might be inbound. I don't think any words can truly capture that level of heroism. You'll recall that in spite of the attacks, the building, in fact, didn't close that day, as Secretary Donnelly referenced. That night, Secretary Rumsfeld held a press conference to let the American people know that the Pentagon would continue to operate. There was a resiliency through duty. So that next day, like many other employees, I headed back into this building. The Pentagon, in fact, has never closed its doors fully since the completion of its construction. And that resiliency lasted well beyond 9/11 through that Phoenix project, the name of the Pentagon's reconstruction project. The team's goal in Phoenix was to rebuild the damaged sections of the building and have it ready to be staffed within 1 year. They put a large digital clock up, and it displayed to the construction team the remaining days, hours, and minutes until September 11th, 2002. With the eyes of the nation on it, the team of thousands worked tirelessly. Shift workers arrived an hour or two ahead of schedule to get a jump on the morning. Others were putting in 20-hour days, and there we witnessed a resiliency through their perseverance. Incredibly, that work of the Phoenix project was finished in August of 2002, more than 3 weeks early. And as we are here commemorating the 20 years since the attacks, this is a fitting moment, I think, to rededicate ourselves to that resilient spirit, one that seeks to act selflessly, uphold our duty, and is dedicated to perseverance. We do so to honor those we lost and remember the innocent that have been taken from us. And we do so to bring renewed purpose to ensuring we remain vigilant in defending our democracy and our nation. Thank you all for taking time today to commemorate the 9/11 events here at the Pentagon and across our nation. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace has brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home.
Please stand for a moment of silence in honor of those lost on September 11th, 2001, and remain standing for the playing of taps. Chaplain Major General Thomas L. Soldium will lead us in the benediction.
Ladies and gentlemen, please receive these words of encouragement and blessing. I do not want you to grieve, the writer of sacred scripture wrote, as those who have no hope. May we today stand tall and proud that so many great American warriors and patriots put everything on the line to preserve our nation's freedoms, both at home and abroad. We will always remember and never forget their love, devotion, and faithful service to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. May the lamp of liberty shine forth brightly and always be a beacon of hope to all freedom-loving people everywhere. Lord, may you bless us and may you keep us and make your face to shine upon us and be gracious to us. Turn your face towards us and give us your peace. It is in your mighty, just, merciful, and holy name I pray. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's ceremony. Thank you for joining us.